Jerry Shepherd.
Yeah.
I live in Dramana in Victoria, in Australia, and I joined the Navy during World War II, and I was in Tokyo Bay for the surrender of the Japanese War, and I left the Navy sometime after the Second World War, and 5 years later the Korean War started, and the Navy were looking for ex-sailors that had served in the war. So I joined up again, and it was a nice feeling knowing that you're helping the United Nations forces. So that's what made me join up again and go to Korea. We left Sydney in February 1952 and arrived in Korea about 3 weeks later. That makes it maybe early March. In 1952 we arrived in South Korea. There were various divisions in the Navy, and I was a seaman. You call it the seamanship division. And seamen, they do everything on the deck of the ship, so they're not down below, they're on deck. Firing guns is a major part of being all guns are fired by seamen, whilst all the other divisions are doing whatever they've got to do. But the seamen manned the guns. We were travelling up and down. We did go up as far as North Korea. We did go up far, but not often. The major battle of all my time in Korea was at the Haeju Gulf, and we had to capture the peninsula. We were only in Korea for a few days when the North Koreans hit our ship. The shell went straight through this captain's cabin, but the captain was on the bridge at the time, but the shell blew a hole right through the captain's cabin, and that happened within a few days of arriving in Korea. So that was, and all the outside of the ship where there was timber, it was fire, it looked disastrous with flames going everywhere. But on a ship you have a group called Damage Control Group, and their job is to handle any damages to the ship. So they were able to douse the flames, but for a start it didn't look good with flames all over the ship. I haven't got one of the, I've got a photograph of the whole crew. There's the shell that the North Koreans put through the ship there. That's the captain's cabin there, and you can see all the woodwork around was caught fire and flames everywhere. So the shell went straight through that into the captain's cabin. The North Koreans were firing at us all the time, and the shells were lobbing just in front of the ship or just behind the ship. But we were hit that one time, but we were under fire for all the time in Korea. We were under fire most of the time, and we had to fire the guns, our guns, which I was on a 4-inch gun, as we call them, a 4-inch gun, and we had to fire the gun during the day, and you'd have to fire the gun during the night. And when you fire a gun on a warship, after you've finished firing the gun, you've got to put a brush right through the barrel, backwards and forwards, to take the coke away from the shell, the explosion, and you've got to clean the inside of the barrels. So when you finish firing the gun, you're still stuck with having to work on the gun. So you got very little sleep, very little sleep. Well, when we arrived in Korea, we arrived in the Korean winter, and really living on a ship with the ice and snow, that was the main focus of one's life, was coping with the severe cold. The average temperature was 17 degrees below Celsius, 17 degrees, and everything on the ship was frozen, and really that was the main purpose of survival. It made one very aware that one had to survive in that terrible situation. The inside the ship was not, it was nothing, no heating or anything, and to go below in the ship, it was not much different to being on the open deck. The whole inside of the ship's side was all frosted over, and you were sleeping it's like sleeping in a refrigerator, in a freezer of a refrigerator. It was that was the main focus, was to survive under severe conditions. The Korean winter, on my right hand side here, is the bow of the ship with all the ice and snow on the ship. We never shaved because it was too cold to shave. You'd cut your face, no electric razors in those days, and you'd cut your face with a razor if you shaved, so no one shaved on the ship. And we were given special clothes. We had, in the old days, you had leather motorbike helmets, and they gave us a motorbike helmet, and they gave us underpants which we called long johns. We used to nickname them passion spoilers. They were double wefted wool underpants with a rope on the top to tie the underpants. So, and we were given a very heavy overcoat, like a tarpaulin, with fleecy wool inside. We were given gloves for the hands. The only difference was they gave us in the Navy, you get one blanket to sleep in your hammock, one blanket, and they gave us an extra blanket up in Korea. So it was very, very hard not to be, you were cold, you never got warm. When we sent a group of South Korean guerrillas ashore at Haeju, one of them was a 14-year-old South Korean boy, only 14, and he'd made many parachute jumps into North Korea, and he brought out a calf to the ship, and we hoisted the calf on board, and we took it to a South Korean orphanage, and we gave the calf to them so that when the calf grew up, the orphanage would get milk from that 14-year-old boy. Had to end up going into a special sort of orphanage. Well, my 3 visits that I have had has astounded me. As I've got a DVD that they gave us, and it mentioned that Korea would take 100 years to get back to square one again, and what you've done is unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Your city, Seoul, your capital, Seoul, is a marvellous city, very impressive, very forward city, Seoul, very forward. Your country, South Korea, has advanced itself so unbelievable. I can't really say that you've done everything. You've made a beautiful capital city, Seoul, and so I can't see where you can progress any further than what you've done. Congratulations to South Korea for what they've done with their country. Very, very impressive. On my second trip to South Korea, they have a banquet on the final night, and that second trip they had me sitting next to the Supreme Commander of all United Nations forces, and so that was the second trip. And then the third trip they had me sitting next to your president, and one side of me was the president, the other side of me was the Supreme Commander again of all the United Nations forces. And the interpreter had a business satchel, and he pulled out a big photograph of me in Korea, and I'd never seen the photograph myself. And so I was absolutely flabbergasted seeing the president look at my photograph. So it was quite exhilarating. Well, the Australian public virtually were unaware about the Korean War. There wasn't much publicity in the Australian newspapers about the war, and so it got the name The Forgotten War. A lot of people didn't know there was a war in Korea.